Daf Mem Beis Amud Aleph, right at the top. In the previous Amud, we learned that Shmuel holds like Rav Shimon that a Dovid Shen Miskaven is muter. Now the Gemara is assuming right now that if Shmuel holds like Rav Shimon as far as Dovid Shen Miskaven, then he would also hold like Rav Shimon as far as the Malacha Shena Tzricha L'Guf is concerned. We have a machlokes throughout between Rav Shimon and Rav Yehuda. Rav Shimon holds that Dovid Shen Miskaven is muter, and Rav Yehuda holds that it's also. And we have a similar machlokes by Malacha Shena Tzricha L'Gufa, where we also have that type of machlokes where Rav Yehuda is the one that asers and Rav Shimon is matir. Malacha Shena Tzricha L'Gufa is a malacha that's done not for either an intended purpose, the purpose that was done in Mishkan. That's the way Taisus learns, Rashi learns, that it was done not for a constructive purpose. It was done to avoid a negative, to remove something which is a detriment, but it's not for a constructive, creative purpose. The malachos in the Mishkan were done to build the Mishkan, to create the Mishkan. For building the Mishkan, something which is a positive, creative purpose, something which is only to remove a negative, that is a malach shein tzricha l'gufa. And malach shein tzricha l'gufa, for instance, to be moitzi a mess from a house, to remove the mess from the house, because the person doesn't want the mess in the house. So that's a malacha shein tzricha l'gufa. Rav Yehuda holds that a malacha shein tzricha l'gufa you're chayav, and Rav Shimon holds that a malacha shein tzricha l'gufa is potter. It's also midrabanan, but it's potter. It's midaraisa. There's no chiyuv on that. So we're assuming that therefore Shmuel would hold like Rav Shimon as far as Malach Shein Tzricha L'Gufa as well. Just like he holds like Rav Shimon as far as a Dovid Shen Miskaven, he would hold like Rav Shimon and Malach Shein Tzricha L'Gufa. So, frak the Gemara, Lameimer the Shmuel, Rav Shimon Sfir Lei. I mean to say that Shmuel holds like Rav Shimon, V'Amar Shmuel. Shmuel says, Mechaben Gachel Shal Matchus B'Rshus Rabim B'Shvil Shelo Yezuka B'Rabim. He says that if there is metal that's glowing, it's burning metal, you can extinguish it if it's in the public and it's a hazard for the public. You can extinguish it on Shabbos so that the public does not get injured with this glowing metal. To be machabe eitz wood, that is potentially a malach deraisa, because one is creating a coal. By extinguishing a metal, there's no malach deraisa. The metal, a coal is not created. The metal glows, it doesn't burn, it's not consumed, and it will go out on its own. The fire does not burn the like wood, where it's burning the wood and it's a source of combustion. The metal, it just glows. So there's no chiyuv deraisa for being machaba, for extinguishing glowing metal. Midrabanan, it's also. But in the case of a nezek, as a hezek l'rabim, for public safety, there are matir, it's muter. But that's only if it's metal. Avaloi gachelas shalates. But Shmuel says if it's wood that's burning, you cannot extinguish the wood. The gacheles, the wood, creates a coal. And there is a kiboy deraisa, there's a malacha deraisa of kiboy by the eights. So even when it comes to public safety, even if it's a tzara and nezek l'rabim, it's still also because we're dealing with a deraisa. Now, if Shmuel held like Rav Shimon as far as a malach shein tzricha l'gufa is concerned, well, this is a case of malach shein tzricha l'gufa. His intent in extinguishing the wood is not to create a coal. The malach tzricha l'gufa scenario would be if he wants to extinguish the wood, the flame, so that he can have a coal. And he have a coal that he can use as he can use to cook coal, to heat things and to cook things. But over here, his purpose in extinguishing the flame, the fire, is not to create a coal. It's to remove a negative. It's only so that people won't get injured. So that's a malacha shein tzrich lagufa. Yes, he's extinguishing, but not for a creative purpose, not for a constructive creative purpose. It's only to remove a negative. It's only so people won't get injured. That's a malacha shein tzrich lagufa. And yet Shmuel differentiates between the matches and the wood. So it must be that he holds that the wood, even though it is a malach shein tzrich lagufa, but since he's creating a coal, it's nevertheless a malacha d'oraisa. It's also a d'oraisa. Therefore, we would not be mater it even for the tzarech harabim. So similarly, the Gemara understands that if Shmuel holds like Rav Shimon, and if he holds like Rav Shimon by Dor Shein Miskaven, he would have to hold like him by Malach Shein Zagufa. But if you see over here that he holds like Rav Yehuda Malach Shein Tzrich Lagufa, so he would be saying the same by Dor Shein Miskaven. The Isal Kedaita Savar La Rav Shimon Afil Sheitz Nami. More answers, no. But Dovid Shein is coming Savar like Rav Shimon, Malach Shein Tzrich Lagufa, Savar like Rav Yehuda. He says that they're not connected, they're not related, they're not dependent on each other. As far as Malach Shein Tzrich Lagufa, he holds like Rav Yehuda. As far as Dovid Shein Miskaven, he holds like Rav Shimon. Omar Ravina Hilka Kayitz Bershus Harabim. Now that we see from over here that Shmuel says when it comes to an Isser D'Rabbanan will be matered so that the public doesn't get injured if it's a hazard for the public. Therefore, if you find a thorn in the Rishus Harabim, you can carry it at less than Dalet Amas at a time. The deraisa of being mavir in Rishus Harabim is Dalet Amas, but Dalet Amas where he picks it up, he goes Dalet Amas and puts it down. But if he does it in intervals that are less than Dalet Amas, if he stops within the Dalet Amas, that's also midrabanan. It's not a chiyuv deraisa. So therefore, over here, since we're saying that for a public safety we waive the Rabbanan, if he finds the kais b'shus harabim mo'alecha pachas me Dalet Amas ubekarmelis, and a karmelis where the whole Isra to begin with in a karmelis, even if he carries in more than Dalet Amas in the karmelis is the Rabbanan, afilu tuva even more because the Isra itself is the Rabbanan. The Mishnah said, and the same for the Mishnah, you can put the warm water into a cup, not to make it hot, but to make it warm. A person could put warm water into cold water. But not vice versa. But not the cold into the hot. Now, when Taisus learns over here, we're talking even if the warm water isn't a kli rishon, you can take water that's in nice and on a chamin, hot water, that even if it's in a kli rishon, and you can pour it into a cold water container containing cold water. But not opposite, not the tzayin l'tay chamin, even if the chamin is in a kli sheni. Even if the chamin is in a kli sheni. What's the reason? Because of the principle of tatoi gavar. The one that overpowers the dominant one is the one that's in the bottom. So if you're pouring the hot water into the cold, it's not going to cook it because the dominant one is the bottom one. So that's not considered cooking. The cold overpowers the hot, so to speak, and therefore there's no bishul on that case. But not vice versa. Now, even if it's the chamen is in a kli sheni, when there's no bishul in a kli sheni, nevertheless, you can't put the cold water into the hot because of exera, because we're geyser, because you might do in a kli rishon as well. That's what Beis Shammai says. However, Beis Hillel oimrim bein chamen l'seichet tzayin or bein tzayin l'seichet chamen muter. And Beis Hillel says whether it's chamen l'seichet tzayin or tzayin l'seichet chamen, it's muter. It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference which one is which. And why is that? Because we're talking over here by a cup. Now the cup is even a hot water, it's a kli sheni. So therefore there's no bishul in a kli sheni. Secondly, a cup is meant to use for liquid to drink, for water to drink. And he doesn't want to put it to a temperature that it's so hot. So he's not going to have that much hot water and to make the mixture so hot that he can't drink it, so it won't come lidei bishul. So therefore, Beis Hillel says it doesn't matter even if it's cold water into the hot water. For those two reasons, it's mutter. But that's only by a case. But if it's a bathtub, but if it's a bathtub is a kli rishon, and in a bath for bathing, he wants the water to be very hot. So over there, we say it's only hot water into the cold because tatzoi gavar, the cold will dominate, so it's not considered bishul. But you cannot put cold into the hot. Rav Shimon ben Manasseh Eiser, and Rav Shimon ben Manasseh, he says it's Aser. Amar Rav Nachman halacha Rav Shimon ben Manasseh, and Rav Nachman says that's the halacha. We'll see shortly what Rav Shimon ben Manasseh, which case he's referring to. So Rav Yosef Lamemer Seifel, Rav Yosef thought to say that a wash basin is Harei Kambati, has the same din as a bathtub. And therefore, if it has the same din as a bathtub, it doesn't matter which way, cold to hot or hot to cold, it's also Amalei Abaya Taner of Chia Seifel, any Kambati. But Abaya says no. He says that it's not like a bathtub, and a wash basin is like a cup, and it's mutter. So, frag the Gemara l'may the salek adaitami kara the sefer kambate. Well, like we learned originally, that Rav Yosef said Sefer is like a bathtub. V'amar Rav Nachman halacha Rav Shimon ben Manasseh, and Rav Nachman says halacha like Shimon ben Manasseh el b'Shabbos rechitza bechamen leka. You mean to say that you can't wash with warm water on Shabbos? Now we learned earlier that the Brisa said that one could wash panav yad v'raglav with warm water on Shabbos. Well, if that's the case, what's the hechatimsa? If you tell me that a wash basin is like a bathtub, how can he get the hot water? The water that's left on the kira, the hot water, will be too hot, and it has to bathe with it, or to wash with it rather, and he'll have to mix it with cold water. So how can he now do that? If you tell me like it's a bathtub, he can't mix it, even putting the warm into cold. And we know that washing panav yad v'raglav is mutter with warm water on Shabbos. Where it says no. Misav Rav Shimon a seifa koi. Rav Shimon is not going on the seifa. That's not what he's referring to, and therefore it's not referring at all to a bathtub. And when Rav Nachman says the halach like Rav Shimon Nasi, it's not referring to a bathtub. And therefore, on a bathtub, we would say that we don't aser it in both directions. We say on a bathtub, Beis Hillel says that by ambate chamel teichot seinen is mutter. But therefore, so as far as the washing panav yad v'raglav, you could put the warm water into cold water. When we said Rav Shimon ben Manasseh is going on the reishik, Beis Hillel matirin, and he says that Beis Hillel matirin says ben cham l'teich tzayin ben tzayin l'teich chamin, that by the cup of water to drink, Beis Hillel says it's mutter, warm into cold or cold into warm. Rav Shimon ben Manasseh but Rav Shimon ben Manasseh says no, cold into warm is also, because tatoi gover, it is also even by a kais, and that's what he's referring to. And Rav Nachman says the halacha is like Rav Shimon ben Manasseh in this case. So Rav Shimon ben Manasseh Damar ki Beis Shammai. Well, then it comes out that Rav Shimon ben Manasseh, that's what Beis Shammai said. So is he passing like Beis Shammai? He says, no, he disagreed with this version of what was mentioned earlier in the ratio of the Brisa. He says there's no machlokes on this, and Beis Hillel agrees that cold into warm is awesome. I saw Rav Kapit Amona. He said, I saw him that he was not makbid on a container. He was not makbid on a warming up a container of water. Where do we see that? Midatana Rav Chia, Noisen Adam, Kitin Shalmaim, Usach Sefer Shalmaim, Bein Cham L'Teich Tzayin, and Bein Sen L'Teich Cham. Because he learned that a person could put the flask of water into a basin of water, whether it's cold into hot or hot into cold. You can't bring a raya from over there that it's mutter to mix the water that it's mutter to mix the water, the cold and water directly. You can't bring me a raya from that, because over there he's putting in the kli, the container itself is being put in the water. So you have the walls of the container, which is a separation between the water inside the container and the water that he's putting into the basin. So there, how can you bring a raya that you can mix cold and hot water? How can you bring a raya from that just because he's putting a container, a flask, into the warm water? No, he says not that he puts the kitin, not noisen adam kitin shalmayim, not that he puts the container of water into a seifel shalmayim. Ben chamel te'tzayim, he says ma'are. He means he poured it into mara adam kitin shalmayim v'av seif shalmayim. He can pour the water, whether it's cold water into warm or warm into cold. So therefore you see that you can mix the water, if you learn it that way, that you can mix the water, and therefore Rav was like Hopit, he was not makbid on that, because we see from the Brisa that it's mutter to mix the waters.